Hello and welcome to this short video where we'll be taking you through the changes to the new PRINCE2 manual. So PRINCE2 2005 to PRINCE2 2009. Why is there a new version of the PRINCE2 manual? People are asking, was there something wrong with the old one? Well, delightfully the answer is no. The reason the new manual was brought out as part of a cycle of review that the OGC, the owners of the method, undertake every 3 to 5 years, where they check fitness for purpose of the method against the requirements of stakeholders, users, regulators, etc. And it's the same sort of thing they do with all their other methods, ITIL, MSP, MOR, etc. So is the new manual evolution or revolution? Well, actually, it's both. There's an evolution of the method itself, some new elements in, some out, some weakened, some strengthened, a general reappraisal of how some of these bits get addressed, but a revolution in terms of the way it's physically delivered. So the material, the methodology has been split into two different elements. Managing successful projects with PRINCE2, a book very much like the previous manual, although lighter, aimed at the project manager predominantly, but also for use by their team, how you actually manage and deliver a project. And the second book is Directing Successful Projects with PRINCE2, and it's a book very much aimed at the project board, how you oversee the delivery, what you're expecting from the project manager, what sort of guidance you need to give back to the project manager, how that should work. Very, very valuable. Lots of training courses have been run, project board, introductions to PRINCE2, to try and get the boards running effectively with the project manager. So it's very good to see them bringing out that material. Okay, so a major change to the manual actually is the introduction of a set of PRINCE2 principles. You could view this as a taste test, if you like. If your project conforms to these 7 principles, then it's considered a PRINCE2 project. If some of them are missing, it's not considered a PRINCE2 project. If you like, it's a sort of good checklist. And they're the sort of things that most experienced PRINCE2 project managers will be able to, if they're asked to draw up a list, sort of things that people would come up with. So that's very good. That sort of hits the mark quite nicely. A key one to note though is learning from experience. Very big change of emphasis in the manual here is about not only recording experience to pass on to following projects, but making sure that you go and find experience from relevant projects that have happened before you, and bring that onto your project as well. Okay, so themes, and the diagram here we've got with the sort of layer cake with principles at the bottom and themes on top, processes in the middle, is again very, very similar to managing successful programs. So they're coming into the same sort of stable style of structure here. So we have this idea of themes. Those of us that knew the previous manual would recognise them as being essentially the components. So previously we had 8 components, and we now have 7 themes. The notable changes here are that configuration management and change control have been combined into a change theme, and the controls component has become a progress theme. And they still all interlock very closely. There's lots of good cross-referencing between them, and a particular emphasis is environmental consideration. So looking at the context of your particular project, the circumstances it's operating in, and tailoring the themes to match that. So, for example, a small project which is very light on can be very light on the organisation side, whereas a very big project has to have more in its organisation side. So, so there's some good hard advice about that. In terms of the number of management products, down from 36 to 26 in the new manual, and that includes bringing on board management products for benefits. So, for example, we have again consistent with the MSP approach. We have a set of strategies at the beginning of the project. So we have a benefits management strategy, communication management strategy, configuration management strategy, risk management strategy. So we set up very early in the project how we're going to handle these various aspects, these key elements of the themes, and then they are delivered with tools and controls later on in the project. So the processes, familiar in terms of their names. We've still got starting up a project, directing a project, controlling stages, closing project. Those things are still the same. One notable absence from that is planning, so we don't have a separate planning process now. The planning elements have been subsumed into the various processes where they previously occurred by bumping out into a process called planning, and I think that's a very positive change. The restructuring of the diagram here, so we have some bands running horizontally across it showing different levels. We have a direction level, a management level, a delivery level, so we can see which parts of the process are being used by which parts of the project team. And above the line at the top we have interactions with corporate or program. And the interactions with program in particular are again strongly running through the new manual. Lots of references to that to interact with the MSP materials where that's appropriate. One of the things to point out, I suppose, is that starting up a project has moved out from being shown as below directing a project into a sort of vertical process in its own right. So when we're starting up a project, all essentially operating as one team across direction and management to set up the structures and appoint the various people to the roles. Okay, so finishing off with winners and losers. Some very, very clear winners in the new method. The introduction of benefits, which I've mentioned several times already, but very, very strongly included here, aligned with MSP, and a good thing to see. Lessons, again, very positive thing to see. It's much stronger reference to this the whole way through, and in particular in starting up a project, lots of looking for lessons. The next three, I think, can be taken as one: context, environment and tailoring. In fact, a whole separate section of the manual about project environment, which is looking at the circumstances, the contextual situation of this particular project you are delivering, and how you're going to tailor your method to match that. Fantastic to see that. The previous book, Tailoring PRINCE2, which supported the other manual, was very good, but it was a separate book and lots of people didn't read it. Bringing that sort of stuff on board here, very, very good. And illustrating, so there's lots of illustrations of points, again, in the same way that's very good in the MSP manual, with mini case studies or references to other projects that have happened in the past, describing their circumstances and how they adopted a particular issue or handled a particular process. Okay, in terms of the losers, the new manual is much less prescribing than the previous one, much more sort of prompting of thought instead of instructing on how to do things, and that's great. It gets away a bit from the bureaucratic view of PRINCE2, which I think came from people reading these detailed instructions in the manual, and gives more thought and guidance to the project manager. Be interesting to see how that comes across in the exams, where we're sort of, well, you could do this, you could do that type of view. Here's a radical one: product-based planning. Definitely a loser here. It's still in the manual, it's still there in the planning section, and there's a big appendix on an example of a product-based planning exercise, but there are no PFDs or PBS in the management products. The fact that there is no planning process per se, it just feels as though it's losing its traction a little bit in the method. It's not quite as prominent as it has been previously. PRINCE2 Shoulder, lugging that big manual around with you. Hopefully those days are gone, because not only is the Managing Successful Projects with PRINCE2 manual smaller than the previous one, but it's also available in a wide range of different electronic formats, so hopefully people won't have to carry the manual around so much. Unless, of course, you're both directing and managing projects, in which case you'll be carrying two books, so we'll just take a watching brief on that. And the last thing, there's a big change in terms of the logo. So the Cityscape PRINCE2 logo that we'll all have seen all over the place previously has now been replaced with the swirl logo that's used for ITIL and management of risk and MSP in different colours. So they're all brought into the same stable now of OGC products. Okay, so that's about it for our short tour.